Aloha all, this is Samana. This is podcast 47. I'm calling it Awaken with Purpose. I took a week off. A lot going on in life, I'm sure for all of us. So what's happening in the stars? This Saturday we have the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. We have a new moon with a lunar eclipse. I'm actually having a small group of 4 with our social distancing outside that we are going to write our intentions for the next 6 months to a year, personally, what we would like to create, and professionally, what we'd like to create, and globally, how we'd like to participate in this changing world. And I believe little events, be it on Zoom or at a safe distance in a small gathering outside, needs to happen, and we need to do this collectively to offer support to create this new world that we all need so desperately. So I want to talk about a couple different things. So first off, I want to speak about a time ago where I've been counseling a lot of people since this pandemic, since March, which I'm grateful for that, not for the pandemic, but for the trust in others to come to me, and we have weekly sessions, and I love that. And it's all done by Zoom, so there you go. Anyways, so what I'm finding is one of the biggest struggles on our path to healing is not trusting that inner voice, or seeing often that there could be 2 different inner dialogues going on, and one could be that kind of sabotage voice of doubt, or it could be our parental upbringing or patterning from the past, versus the other, which is the one that I want to speak most of today, that we need to cultivate, and it's that inner guidance, or that intuitive voice, which we are all born with, regardless of how right or left-brained we are, how logical we are, how scientific we are. We all still have that inner guidance, that inner voice. It could be the subtle thing. Again, you're at the grocery store and you're like, you have your list and you're following your list, and then you notice the laundry detergent. You just look over there. There's like a moment of pause, and then you just keep walking. Now, I've learned that moment of pause means I may not have checked that I'm almost out of laundry soap, but the fact that my attention went there for one entire moment, I'm going to put that in my cart. So moments, I've always told students this, moments last as long as you need them to, as opposed to minutes. Minutes are linear time. Moments last as long as you need them to. Start to notice throughout the day where your attention is naturally drawn. And if it pauses for a moment on something, to the subtlest thing, insignificant, such as that laundry soap, to that flash of you had a thought to call your mother, or to call a friend you haven't talked to in a long time. Those flashes, those guidance, that insight, that is the inner voice we want to turn up the volume, and we want to cultivate, and we want to give it strength and support and learn how it feels in our body. Learn not to doubt it or judge it. When mine first started coming up, so I would say in my 20s, when I moved to Hawaii at 21, my whole life changed, because I went from this very LA lifestyle, working in Beverly Hills and all the money clients, and I had 5 jobs, and I just made it happen. I worked quite hard and loved what I did, but lots of distraction. I moved to Hawaii, and it was this new chapter. So it was more like Hawaii really instills nature, and that's a big part of your life. And regardless if you are more creative and intuitive or not in your life, when you're in nature, it actually does something to the brain in a healthy way, that it will put you in a balance or in an alignment with parts of yourself that our logical mind can try to filter out. So in this whole podcast for today, I want you to know that's one of your instant tools. So regardless of if you're working indoors and there's no windows or what is happening, you need to find time where you get outside and you're looking at trees and you're where there's green around and nature and some form of like animals, birds, wind chimes, something. Like I couldn't do this without even in Texas in triple digit weather, I keep my window cracked a few inches just because I need a fresh breeze, even if it's hot. I need to hear and see the birds, and that keeps me aligned. It really helps support me. But let's go back to this learning how to discern that inner voice, because when I work with clients, they tell me about, well, my mind is spinning or I have all these thoughts, and then I show them this little movement, how it goes in a circle, like a rat on a wheel, like a hamster or a gerbil on a wheel, how it just goes in circles. Well, that is not your inner guidance. That is your programmed mind. And what that's doing, when that is happening, that spinning, where it's just relentless, and sometimes we're conscious of the voice and sometimes we're not. Sometimes that voice is saying you're old, you're worthless, you're fat, you'll never be lovable, you'll never get the job you want, you don't have any friends, you're no fun. It just goes on and on. Sometimes we're not aware of that thought and it's happening. And all we need to do, how we can harness this and take charge of this, is notice when it's spinning. Don't look at what it's saying, but know in that moment it's time to do that breath, that sigh, that cleansing breath, because that will always be your reboot. That you need to stop because you need to check in and see what you're feeling, see what's happening. Something's uncomfortable, something hurt your feelings, something needs attention inside. And it's important to check in, to just take a breath, go for a walk, change gears, change channels, whatever your brain is doing, reboot it, redirect it. Okay, so now back to this, learning that inner voice. So when it first started coming to me, it was this tiny little voice. So of course I didn't trust it, and I had a lot of doubt, and I judged it a lot. And I thought I was making it up. I thought, okay, I must be crazy and I'm making that up because it was so faint. And then I noticed that it was happening more often. So it wasn't necessarily louder, but it was constant. It was almost like there was this low volume recorder in the back of my mind that no matter who I was talking to or what I was doing, this was like a nonstop dialogue happening. And so I couldn't help but be aware of it. So I started noticing, what is it saying? And I would have to stop and be quiet to listen to it. I'd have to go sit at the ocean and meditate, or be by the lake or wherever you're at, by the trees, and just listen to it to see what is it how is this happening, and why is this happening, and what is it saying to me? Okay, so also during that time period of my life, so many profound changes started happening. So this was in my 20s. This was right around 25, 26, 27. So those 3 years were quite the whirlwind for me of what was happening was my deep childhood programming versus who my soul wanted to be. Like, what was my awakened purpose? So I call this time often, if you've heard of the phrase, the dark night of the soul. So this started from a religious content, and it's very spiritual. And basically, it's a reference to waking up. So what was happening was I was waking up to a subtle awareness of my spiritual self, my spiritual responsibilities, and acknowledging that this too was an aspect of me that was real. And this too needed daily attention and fueling as much as my physical body needed food and rest. So, having access to my spiritual resources became necessary for fundamental survival skills. In these times, more than ever on the planet, everybody needs all resources and skills that they can tap into. This spiritual self, this awakened self, gives us a collective, gives us support, gives us community, gives us purpose, gives us beyond the limits of our heart, so many things. So many of us do not address or accept the relevance of needing to support our spiritual growth. And I understand if you come from a scientific background that this may go against you, yet you will hear some things that I'm saying that ring true. I am not saying a spiritual person or someone who utilizes their spiritual resources is someone that is like, I go to the beach every day and I just hang out and I don't really do anything. I'm a trust funder or, I live off the government. Or I'm not saying that this is not a person that cannot affect things in a positive way, in a very grounded way. I am saying that I have my intellectual skills, I have my emotional IQ, I have my physical strength and health, and I have my spiritual. And the spiritual is the more subtle one. That is the one that we have to be more tuned in to the subtleties, to the breeze of the wind on my skin, to noticing when someone sighed across the room, to noticing when you walk in and your partner doesn't seem like their normal self, because you're aware of these changes instead of they didn't say to you, hey, hon, I'm having a hard time. That subtlety is quite profound when we learn to tune it up, turn it up. So, as this spiritual awakening began in my mid-20s, I was acutely aware of many things were changing. So I had a deep sense of right and wrong. My sense of morality and was heightened, and my sensitivity towards others was stronger than I've ever known. So I found this deep urge, this desire that was arising inside of me, that it wanted to help like strangers, like people that were vulnerable, people that were victimized, persecuted, abandoned, people that were neglected, like people that I didn't even know. I just started to feel them, and I wanted to be significant in their life, in helping them in some way, any way I can. If it's sharing a meal with them, if it's offering advice to help, whatever chaos they're going through, that I could give them the next speck of direction, the next here, this is your next line, this is your next path. So the other significant things that were happening during this time, during this spiritual awakening, was my desire and my craving to need more time alone by myself in nature, to be quiet, to meditate. Like I instinctively, just like naturally, I'd wake up and I'd start to do my day, and I just saw, okay, I just want to sit and breathe. I don't want to think. Thinking was exhausting me. It's like just to go into planning and plotting and was starting to exhaust me. So meditation came quite easily. And I also noticed that I started to desire a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. where processed foods, again, your 20s, people tend to eat a lot of fast foods and all, but processed foods and sugar became repulsive. I instantly had no interest in it. My body immediately began stretching as I woke up. I remember that. It would just start to like this exaggerated yawn and then this movement. And then I'd get down on the floor and I'd just start stretching and breathing and totally exploring each sensation in my body, using my breath, noticing, wow, that feels good. Isn't that a heaven move? And just like, so how about that for, isn't that yoga and Tai Chi? But it started happening organically. The exploration of the physical sensations in my body were becoming more enticing to me than the thoughts and the planning that I could do, which is where my default mode was. That's where I was used to. And most of us are in that. So I'm sharing these things. I'm trying to entice you into wanting, into first knowing this is true, that you can awaken to this truer sense of yourself, that you can tap into these resources, that you can naturally see without so much work. I have to join a program. I have to start dieting. I have to be part of this workout thing. I wish I was part of this meditation class. That when you are in alignment with your heart, with your nature, with your spiritual resources, your body, without effort, will begin to crave what it needs to be whole and strong and optimal. I notice my ability to listen deeper and to be more patient than I've ever was before. You got to know I'm in my mid-20s. That's not necessarily how that goes often. I noticed that my need to speak was less. It wasn't so much about hearing me. And I found when I spoke that it was exhausting. So I realized that I wanted to speak more precisely and exacting in what I really meant. So I would actually reflect on that. Like if I was having a conversation with someone, I'd take a moment without being uncomfortable with that pause. And I'd say to them, give me a moment. I want to really look at this. And I'd look inside myself and I'd see, what is it that I want to add to this? Or how do I want to support this view of this person? Or what is my view of that? And I actually found also that it became impossible for me to speak negatively or judging. Sarcasm dropped from my vocabulary, and I was actually raised on sarcasm. So these beautiful, naturally occurring evolutions were happening inside of me. This was this profound awareness of all of these unique changes happening. I noticed when I'd speak to people or when I would be around people and listen to them, that the highlight, the theme that I was hearing is that everybody suffers on some level. Like everybody is enduring just being human. We all have a story, no matter how much that face is or that appearance of how great our life is. We didn't have to have a disastrous childhood. We don't have to be broke. We don't have to be sick. We don't have to be all of those things. But there are some levels that every human being suffers with. And they feel separate and they feel judged and they feel unworthy and lonely and afraid. And now, in these times, this is activating all of those shadows, all of those dark places where it's like, I just want to keep going with my whatever pattern I could create in a day-to-day distraction because it's coming up. I could feel it rising up, and it's so uncomfortable. So I want to tell you that as much as this dark night of the soul, this awakening was happening. So I'm telling you like the pluses of what was occurring. And the pluses is my compassion, my deep understanding, my assessment that no matter how a person behaved, if they seemed gruff or unkind or however, that instead of me seeing, look at that angry asshole, which would have been a judgment, and I grouped them in this one little shot, that I kept my mind open. And what I noticed was their level of pain along with their level of life tool skills. And I would see apparently their pain was great because of their behavior. And apparently they haven't learned any life tools, anything, any way to care for themselves or ease or soothe themselves. So I see people's behavior when it's unconscious as it's like children that were never taught, right? And there's many of them out there. We're seeing it. We have to deal with this all the time. So if we can have compassion for them instead of bringing this harsh energy towards them where it will create a fight, it will shift. It will help it easier. So these insights will help us. Now, these were a lot of the pluses of this change happening within me. But at the same time, you need to know this dark night of the soul is called that because it's this deep, continual feeling along with all of that happening, this feeling of panic or this awareness that the bottom's dropped out. Everything I knew to be true was no longer that. Does that sound familiar with what's happening on the planet right now? How many of us is this happening to? Everything we knew is no longer true. Where we worked, where our safety is. I wasn't certain of anything. This is happening globally right now. So this story is very important for me to share. So everything that I knew that soothed or distracted me no longer worked. Being Italian, food was a great comfort, and as I said, my tastes were changing by the day. I wanted to instinctively eat lighter, eat cleaner, basically whatever was natural. I would say, if God made it, I'll eat it, meaning if it's natural and not processed or man-made, my body craved it. In this day and time, my typical little snack or lunch or dinner was some wine, maybe some Chardonnay with some brie and baguette, and maybe zucchini or something sliced. And I felt instantly I didn't want the wine because I had this deeper sense that I wanted to stay clear. I wanted to notice every nuance of this transformation that was happening. I was terrified. Yet, at the same time, because of this destabilizing feeling, as I said, it was also mixed with these heightened awarenesses, these heightened capabilities. So in short, it was the ability to take in more information. I would encounter a stranger at the store or talking to a friend or family member, even on the phone, and my mind was flooded with so much information that I could barely hear what was actually being said. So this connecting with these other human beings, these family, friends, strangers on the street, it was this experience that someone turned up the volume. And again, it's as if I could hear their thoughts, but more importantly, I could feel them as if I were them. I could feel their struggles, their pain, their joys. I remember being in line at the grocery store and I was overhearing these two women having this conversation, and I wasn't eavesdropping. I was just waiting in line, and naturally, I was listening to them. And as I was hearing the story, the details of the story didn't matter, but I found myself, I was crying because it was as if it was happening to me. And it was this like beautiful, overwhelming feeling. But I was aware of, wait a minute, I don't even know these people, and why am I feeling this so personally? So the question or the point of this podcast is, what is this switch of humanity that went on inside me during this spiritual moment in my life, during this spiritual acceptance of my resources, of those subtler resources? And more so, how did I ever live without that as a part of me? I think of everything, and I could tell you details, and people used to... there was a person that came to me who was a professional author when I was 20. I was living in California and wanted to write my life story up to that because they thought it was so fascinating on an earthly plane and all the things I have done. And I would say that there is nothing up to this point of my awakening that mattered, that really mattered to me. So we look at what's happening with this world pandemic, and I'll tell you, the plus of this world pandemic, this virus, is it isn't just America. It's all of humanity. It's the entire planet. We look at this Black Lives Matters movement. Again, big changes. Finally, an awareness of the repression, of the neglect of so many people on this planet. This too is global and is not just America. There's not a separation. It's connecting us. Even our election, which is so pivotal on so many things, and it's causing so much separation because our leader is an idiot. Again, my opinion, I'm sorry about that. But even our American election in November, as much as it's our country, America used to be considered one of the greatest, most influential countries in the world. I mean, I'm old enough to know this, even though I wasn't very political when I was younger. The world looked to us for help. They looked to us for our resources. They looked to us for taking our lead and following. Well, all of that's changing. There is no authority. There is no healthy authority to follow. There is only separation. There is only distance and us and them. There is nothing spiritual here. There is no awakening. There is no collective consciousness. There's none of that. So, we look at the benefit of all these challenges, and we must allow them to break our limited beliefs down, our sense of selfing. This is what I want, what I need, how I'm going to get ahead. Our sense of superiority, our sense of separateness, me, my family, my friends. We need to break that down. We need to allow what is happening globally on the planet beyond our control, and let it begin to rebuild our foundations. Allow it to access our spiritual resources where we feel that deep sense of right and wrong in our gut, in our concerns for all lives, wherever they live across the globe, whatever color their skin is, what their culture, what their language, what their religion, what their sexual preference. May we all allow this crucial time to be our dark night of the soul, collectively, to deeply question, who are we? And what really matters? What matters to us? Ask that. What matters to me personally? How does this affect me personally? Ask that first. How much will we help our neighbors by wearing our masks and distancing, even if you're healthy and young? By protesting peacefully and until this old archaic structure falls like the statues that represent the same false truths and separatism. May we wake up. Yes, that heightened sensitivity that I spoke of during my 20s, when that dark night of the soul, which we are in as a collective group, as a mass, when that happens, it does come with a new set of pains. And honestly, there are some days that I am so overwhelmed that I want to withdraw and stay in my hole because I can't read any more articles. I can't have any more conversations. I have nothing more to give. I've done my counseling sessions. I can't even connect with friends or family because I'm empty. And I've learned to just recharge, to just go sit outside in my backyard and know that I'm empty. Because if I were to push myself from this point, when I've handled as much as I can, if my behavior is frantic, if my behavior is judging or sharp or impatient, then I need to withdraw. And I need to sit and go breathe. And I need to eat a peach, eat something fresh, go for a walk in the park, go to the lake, jump in that great water, do something that will recharge me so that I can help. So this spiritual awakening, this dark night of the soul, as we awaken to our spiritual responsibilities, know that this is happening globally. We are not the difference of suffering before this spiritual responsibility, before we awaken that part of ourselves. The difference is we're not alone in our suffering. This is a noble suffering. It's connected and worthy for a higher purpose. Peace on earth, freedom, the right to be and breathe clean air. It's time to wake up, people. Look around and see if the suffering of others, see that they all suffer. Understand their limitations. See how you can help. Choose to be the solution to heal many, to live with integrity. We are making history globally, along with creating a world that will be golden, that will be safe and equal for all of us, to have our voices heard, and for future generations, our children, our grandchildren, to be heard and seen and matter. So that is my story for today. I will remind you I am a life coach. I'm doing Zoom sessions for $75, and we could do a sliding scale. So I specialize in relationship counseling. I also specialize in self-care tools, where when we heal parts of from past wounds to become whole and strong again, do you notice that you go so far in life and then it seems to fall apart, your floor drops out? Well, having counseling, having someone etherically hold your hand to create a plan and rebuild and restructure a new foundation for you, and bringing in spiritual elements. I give my clients homework where they either do journaling or writing or certain spiritual exercises, or we alter their diet a little bit, or we'll do different things, meditation and reflections. So enjoy this new moon on Saturday. Set your intentions with your partner, with your group of friends. And again, we have our David Garrison and myself, we have a Be a Relationship Architect page on Facebook. Sign up for that. I post wonderful, enlightening, heart-filling, and informative articles often. Blessings and aloha.